Hello, 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 and welcome to another another episode of Shared Library on the Vengeful Bakery channel. Today we're going to be looking at Beginner's Guide. Beginner's Guide is a pretty unique game. It is the guy who did Stanley Parable, and like Stanley Parable, it's a game where you have a bunch of voiceover happening. Sorry, I'm going to move my mic a little bit there. I don't know if that's going to improve things, but I hope so. It's the guy who did Stanley Parable, and he sort of talks you through a kind of story of his friend. This game is actually fairly self-explanatory. I have played all the way through it, and I have opinions about it. But let's jump on in. Let's take a look together. So here we go with Beginner's Guide. Please make sure audio is on. Controls are WASD and clicking.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing the Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Reedon. I wrote the Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way. And mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, you know, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveyWreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
Whisper machine, status active, evacuate immediately. So, don't let the gun fool you. What the narrator said at the beginning is true.
Called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
When he says these games aren't fascinating, he's not kidding. This is not a game about games, it's a game about a narrative.
You can click to fire the gun.
Ooh, I can fire the gun. And so, Yeah, I mean, if you're interested in sort of the narrative of this game, then that's what you're getting. If you're interested in an anthology of games, I wouldn't call any of these really games. They're sort of linear experiences. Interactive experiences, technically interactive experiences. Where are we going? All right. So,
security code breached.
there are no bad guys yet, which I'm sure the narrator's going to talk to us about here, because that would introduce conflict.
It kind of looks like this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets. But ultimately we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin shooting activation.
Oh, there we go. Door's open.
I love how you can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
There's several points.
Apparently the space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
No, I want to go through the labyrinth. You
Or
can't tell me
if
what
you'd
to do.
really like to solve the labyrinth, you're welcome to do that too.
Okay, that's it. I got my Easter egg.
Okay, this is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Hey, you there, in the engine room. You could save us all. That beam is powering the whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could you give yourself?
Incidentally, I'm not moving the mouse to the left. I don't know if I have a glitch going on here or if this is just how the game behaves, but don't blame me.
Let me pause here for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
So much for playing the game that is instead of should have been.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it, like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
So look, I think you get the idea. We're not going to go full 15 minutes into this Mama Jama because it's pretty much this. It's pretty much the game designer talking about his friend Coda's games and sort of trying to read into them a little bit, get into Coda's head a little bit. It's a narrative experience. It's basically an interactive novel. I would say it even has fewer gameplay elements than the Stanley Parable because it's far more linear, where Stanley Parable plays with the non-linear nature of its narrative. So yeah, check it out if you're interested. And thanks for tuning in. This is a shorty but goodie. Take care.